postpartum. I think my first question was, is she going to die? I mean, it just was like crazy. Obviously, I know how we kind of met, but I want to hear your side of the story. Is our friend Ashley, did you take it from there, I guess?
Yeah, so for Halloween, you know, I was trying to promote my glass and my Instagram and all that stuff.
Which is called?
Shy Glassworks on Instagram, of course.
Yes.
And she was one of the persons that entered, and she ended up winning.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
And so she got herself a Snoopy nightlight.
Oh, that's right.
And then she came into my work and picked it up, and she was like, "Hey, my friend does this holiday market. It's to kind of raise awareness and money for cystic fibrosis." And I was like, "Well, I have cystic fibrosis, so that's kind of fitting." Yeah, pretty weird, pretty odd. And so that's kind of how we met, and she put me in touch with you. And
it is a rare genetic disease, and so you don't really, it's kind of an isolating disease.
Well, that, and they kind of promote that, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, well, if you are going to see somebody mask up, whatever. I can't think of like an adult that I've ever met with it.
Really?
You know? Just obviously in passing at clinic and stuff like that, but it's not like I'm sitting and saying hello to them.
Right.
And then, back when I was a kid, they used to do a cystic fibrosis walk for Boomer Esiason, like the football player.
Oh.
Like one of his kids has or had. I'm not sure if he's still alive or whatever, but I did participate in that. It was, I don't know. I was probably in like first grade, second grade.
Oh wow!
A while ago.
Yeah. You know what's so crazy is that I feel like, no judgment, I guess, but when we first were told that Dolly likely had CF from her infant screening, we first took her to a general ped before we were able to get into the CF clinic, and they were telling us like how different it is and that she'll be able to take these miracle drugs that are on the market now, and you know there's camps for people with CF and their siblings and stuff, and so you're like feeling better about it. And then you get to the CF clinic and they're like, oh yeah, we don't do that anymore because people with CF make other people with CF sick, and it's like, wow, that is the saddest thing about CF is that you can't even...
Yeah, there's not like there is a community, but there's not a community. Like you...
From afar.
Yeah, like social distancing is just a thing since I've been a kid, you know, so... the whole current situation with everything else is...
Obviously
kind of normal.
Right, the internet's been around for a while now, but with the growing of social media, you can connect with people virtually, but it's really not the same, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, it's like everybody's case is different, so it's kind of hard sometimes to relate to somebody who has issues that I don't have.
Right.
You know, kind of makes you thankful for what you do have or what you don't have when it comes to your symptoms. So.
Totally. Can I ask how old you are?
I'll be 40 in November.
Okay, yeah. So was infant screening a thing in Idaho?
I don't know exactly. Like when I was diagnosed, from what I was told at least, my parents just kept taking me back to like the ER because I couldn't keep any food down. Like I was constantly just sick and crying and all that stuff.
How old? Like as a baby?
Yeah. I think pretty much as an infant.
Yeah.
And then they diagnosed me then, but my symptoms were like so mild that they weren't sure for sure.
Did they do a sweat test?
That happened when I was maybe like 7th or 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. So it wasn't really like a cut and dry thing. And so they diagnosed you or you got that initial debated diagnosis at a very young age. Were there any medicines or any therapies that you did?
So I used to take, essentially it's like the first version of Creon is what I used to take as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and I forget the name of it, but...
Yeah. But it was like enzyme.
Yeah, you crack it open, put it in some like applesauce or something.
We still do that.
Yeah.
Every meal, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so but no like pulmozyme or any, obviously there's no modulators
No,
at the time.
nothing like that.
Yeah, okay.
And like another thing too is like my mutation is like so, I guess, minimal or rare
Mm-hmm.
that you know they're not going to test for
Right.
for something with my mutation.
So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Do you have two rare mutations, or do you have one delta and?
Yeah, I've got a delta, and then the other one is like I think it's like D192N or something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And did you ever meet Mary?
She's the one that kind of can tell you all about your mutations.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and she was always kind of pitching that like there's a handful of people that have my mutation, like 4 or 5 people. So it's just
right.
like
That's Dolly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of her mutations are very rare, and combined, I think she's 1 of 5 in the world.
yeah,
So
and I
it's
think
like,
that's kind of
yeah.
how I am too.
Yeah.
Like there's one case I think that I read about somebody in like Italy had it with the same mutation
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Because it's interesting where CF kind of, obviously it's rare overall, but there are definitely parts of the world where it's more common.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I think Australia, it's really common there. So I honestly haven't learned that much about that yet, but and my husband and I still haven't been tested, so we aren't sure who has
Like, who the
what.
carrier or whatever
Yeah,
is.
and it was totally a surprise to us. As far as we know, there was no one else in our family tree. There
Mhm.
likely was someone, but they probably just didn't know what it
Yeah.
was, and they died really young.
Mhm.
But for you, was that like a light bulb moment, like, oh, like with your mom or dad, like, oh, my great grandma died from,
Yeah, so I think the only known one that I'm aware of is my dad's brother.
Oh, okay.
But I never met him.
He
Like,
did have CF.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, he did have CF, and I don't know anything about him though. Like,
Yeah,
he was kind of just
yeah.
a distant family
Right,
member, and
yeah.
I don't even know if he was alive when I was born. So.
Right, okay, interesting. Have you ever thought about or care to know more about?
Not really.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've finally just taken the whole burden of CF on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and just owned it as what I can do and what I can control,
Right.
and everything else is kind of just.
Yeah. So I know you said that it was kind of interesting in your family how it was kind of like talked about or not talked about. Like, what was your
Yeah.
life as a child?
Yeah,
with
so as a kid, when I first found out that I had CF, my parents smoked cigarettes, and my mom immediately quit.
CF? Oh, that's
And
nice.
then my dad, I didn't see him very often because he lived in Lewiston when we were down here. But anytime I did see him, he was smoking or whatever, and roll him down the window, that's fine.
Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
It's all right, Thankfully, my lungs are pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like it was never really acknowledged. I don't think.
Mhm.
My mom would take me to clinic, but that was kind of the extent of it.
Mhm.
No one ever prepared me for like, this is what's gonna happen, or this is what could happen.
Mhm.
This is how you should take care of yourself to avoid things like that. But then the rest of the time it was kind of just ignored.
Mhm.
Even up to like current times, my mom, I mean,
Mhm.
like I said, my dad passed away, but my mom, like, she, especially during COVID, like, wouldn't even mask around me, didn't get any sort of vaccination or immunization or whatever, and just stuff like that. It's just like, God will save you or whatever.
Oh.
And
Oh, man.
so
Yeah, that's hard to hear. Like, I really don't want to pass judgment, but
please do.
I mean, I remember when they told us, I don't remember like how, like Dolly was still really little, but
Mhm.
they were like saying that her prognosis would heavily depend on our, consistency with therapy and stuff. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking like, who is not doing therapy for their kids?
Mhm.
Like, who's not going to do everything they possibly can? Like, we take her therapy very seriously. It's, right now she does twice a day, 30 minutes of her vest,
Mhm.
and she does do nebulized treatment as well, and obviously takes Creon every time she
Mhm.
eats. But I just can't even imagine like not doing that, because if it can prolong her life in any way,
Exactly.
obviously I'm going to do that. So
Mhm.
like, do you think that it was a sign of the times, or was it she kind kind of maybe grief-stricken and didn't know how to handle it? She was just ignoring it?
You know, I haven't ever dove into that with her just because we aren't on the best terms. But I, at least like giving her grace, she was a pretty young mom. So maybe she didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, got a divorce from my dad when I was, I don't know, like 3 or 4 or something like that. So there's a lot of things, you know, and she probably has her own traumas from just life in general.
Right.
She used to do like the cupping on the back. I do remember that as a kid. But I've never had to wear a vest, so that was never a thing. But I mean, I don't know. Like most people wouldn't even know that I have CF.
Yeah, that's so. Wait, so you don't even do a vest now? So that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's so cool that you. So do you? What's it called when they test your lungs? What is that called? But you like blow into a tube, right? And it checks your lung function.
Yeah, the lung function. So usually I hit around like 98 to 101.
Oh my gosh, that's like really good, right?
Yeah. PFT, that's what we're looking
PFT,
for.
okay, yeah.
And it's always kind of been like that, you know, even if I go and I have a cold or something, I'll still hit like the high 80s. So they've never really, I mean, obviously they tell me, you know, do your breathing exercises, take your meds and all that stuff to help keep you where you are, because once it starts going downhill, it's pretty hard to like stabilize, and you definitely can't go back up. So
about preserving.
Preserving what I have.
Yeah.
And so I was doing Fulmazine for a while, and then there was some like cultures in there, and we got rid of those, and so the doctors have kind of recommended that I don't need to do it at this point. Interesting. So I do that when I need to. I'll do like huff cough or flutters or whatever like that.
Okay. So what can I ask? Are you taking a modulator?
So I think Trikafta.
Okay, so that's awesome. And did you notice a difference since taking Trikafta?
Honestly, I didn't.
Yeah.
But that's okay, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Like I'll keep taking it. I don't really think that I noticed anything. I think maybe my lung function went up a tiny bit. But you know, I've been at, you know, not to like brag or anything, but I've been at the top already. Yeah. And so we're just stabilizing. You're just
staying there. Yeah. Have you had or noticed like pancreatic issues like when you were younger? Or
definitely. I had a bunch of pancreas health problems, a lot of pain. I've had ultrasounds on my pancreas a few times just to see what's going on, and thankfully, you know, a little bit of pain meds and it goes away after a bit, but that's the importance of taking your Creon.
Totally. So I was gonna say, have you ever gone through a phase where you were not taking your Creon or resistant or anything and noticed a difference, or just forgot to or didn't have it with you? And
I mean, like, I know we're supposed to kind of take it with everything that we eat.
But no, you're not. It gets so complicated. If it's like a popsicle, you don't need, anything that doesn't have fat, right? It's mostly the fat or protein, but
and like, so, you know, if I'm having like a piece of pizza, absolutely I'm gonna have it, but if I'm eating an apple, whatever.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. For the most part, we give it to Dolly with everything she eats, just to be safe. I don't know, but also you don't want to take too much because that can irritate the lining of your stomach and everything, and so it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I kind of just average like 6 or 7 per whatever. Yeah. You know, if it's candy bar, sure. If it's piece of pizza, sure. If it's like, I don't know, salad, why not? Yeah. You know, I think I cap out around like 32 a day, and everyone said that that's safe. So.
Yeah. Right. So Dolly is not eligible for modulators like Trikafta, which going back to when we first got the news and it was super devastating. We had this hope, right, that she was everyone was like our friends that are doctors or PAs calling us, trying to make us feel better, and that's so nice. And then come to find out that she's one of I think they lowered the percentage now. It was around 10, and now I think it's like 5 or 6% of people that can't take modulators. So that was obviously a hard pill to swallow, pun intended, but fortunately, knock on wood, wherever, she's been pretty healthy too. And definitely, I don't know the names of her mutations, I feel like I should, but one they do know is pancreatic related, and we have noticed that, like they've tested, she doesn't make any digestive enzymes, so we know that she's deficient there. But as far as I know, her lung function is still good. I do feel like it's kind of in the dark still when we go to the doctor, and I know they have to be careful about what they say, but I'm always just wanting to be like, so how is she really doing? Like, what do you really think? And I won't hold you to anything, but so it is kind of a weird place to be where you, like you said, you're grateful for right now, and she's healthy right now, but you don't really know what the future's going to hold.
Yeah.
It seems bright.
Absolutely. I mean, it's only extended since I was a kid.
Right.
When I was, as far as I can remember, when I was a kid, it was like, you'll be lucky to like be 13.
Right, yeah.
And then it
children's
was,
disease.
yeah, and then it was like, well, you'll be lucky to be like 18, 19. Ugh. And then it got to like 25, and then it got to 33, and like, no one ever gave me that, like, but you could still be around longer than that. It was always just like, it seems so like,
yes,
end points, like you're gonna be 33, you're gonna die on your birthday. Like, and then that's how it was. And
so what was that like? Like, how old were you when they told you you could expect to live till you were 13?
Oh gosh, small, like under 10, I would think. Like, and that was kind of the approach back then, though. Like, I feel like doctors now have a lot more of a human quality to them.
Yeah.
They can deliver bad news with a lot more care and consideration, rather than, when I was young, it was just like, this is what it is.
Right.
And so like that was always a burden too. It was just like, well, what's the point of going to college? What's the point of doing all this other stuff if I'm not even going to be alive?
Right.
But the more that I took ownership of it, of myself, because like I would say that I probably went to clinics by myself since I was like 16, maybe.
Okay.
And making those connections with doctors who could inform me rather than a parent who just was passive and didn't have any input or safety or anything for me. I had a clinic where there was a doctor from Portland, I think, that was like visiting or doing a residency or something like that. And he kind of was just like, well, you're doing good right now, so like, why wouldn't you be doing good later?
Right.
And that was kind of like the aha moment. I was like, oh, you know what? I probably can live longer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm sure, again, to try not to pass judgment, whatever, but they're coming from a place of like wanting to be honest with you, and I guess that's what it looked like at the time. But as I just try to imagine a 10-year-old who's told that they're gonna have 3 more years to live, like that's got to be so hard to hear, and how do you even wrap your head around that? And so I think it's amazing that you've continued, to like that you didn't just give up.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely given me a bunch of anxiety about stuff. I mean, not so much more now because I've I guess done the work and informed myself to realize that that's not what is happening.
Right.
But when I was younger, I would just hate going to the clinic. Like, I would just hate it.
Afraid of what they would like tell you.
Yeah, everything's gonna be bad news.
Right.
There's always these things, and I used to cancel on appointments all the time. I'm just like, I made it. All right, it's 10 o'clock. I can't. I'm not going. And looking back, it's like, I guess I dealt with it how I could at the time, but there's really nothing to be afraid about.
Right.
I think that we have a good support team locally, especially now that they have like a therapist down there and stuff like that.
I was just going to ask you if you've taken advantage of this counselor that's on staff, right? Have you done that?
I did, especially during COVID, like because I quarantined for 18 months or something crazy like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
which has its own set of like, trauma.
Yeah, that was an adventure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I have like pretty, not so much recently, because I think Becky and I worked through a lot of things, and she was kind of like, well, unless you think you need something right now, like I'm just gonna be here when you do. And so I haven't had like a one-on-one with her in a minute, but she definitely like, she's always there, and she kind of just gets CF. She gets, she deals with a lot of people that have it, so she has
Yeah.
a good perspective, where I tried to go to a therapist, previous to that, the CF clinic recommended, but they weren't like in touch with that part of the disease or whatever. And, he was like, well, what's your main concern, et cetera. And I was like, well, honestly, like death, that's kind of the thing. And I realized that it didn't work out with him, because he was like, well, you could walk outside and get hit by a bus right now. And I was like, yeah, I get that, but there's a difference between getting hit by a bus when you're walking across the street, or somebody being like, hey, this bus is going to hit you tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
So
just you're kind of always kind of waiting for that certain.
Yeah, like when's the bad news going to happen? When is and that's a hard thing to deal with. So
yeah, for sure. Ugh. No, I'm sorry. It's so interesting for me to hear your perspective, because I only know it from my perspective of having a child with it, and just thanks, because you're helping me learn so much. And like I don't know how, or I'm curious how Dolly will kind of handle it, she's just kind of she's a classic second child, wild spirit, like so stubborn and independent, and it's exhausting. But I always think in the back of my head, this is going to be so helpful for her CF, because she's just not gonna let it stop her, is my hope anyway. She has this thing, and it's definitely a shitty thing, but it doesn't have to be, or it doesn't have to rule her life.
For sure.
And also, opposite, I guess, of your kind of family dynamic, is that I worry more about it being too present in her life. I don't ever want her to feel identified by CF, so it's such a delicate dance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're doing great already. You're involved and supportive, and sometimes you just need people to believe in you that you'll be all right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I know we don't need to get into our childhood trauma, but I think that's so huge to just like feel seen and heard, and like I see this, and I'm sorry, and I value you. Yeah, I mean, that does always make me feel better, and that was kind of the first, because I definitely grieved a lot, and my husband Ryan did too, but it really like struck me, and I remember he said that if this had to happen to anyone, it's so good that it happened to us. Like, we're such a strong family dynamic. And so now hearing your story, it's like, that's so true. Like, she will be in good hands for sure. So, I mean, I feel like I know the answer to this now, but what was your experience like in school having CF?
This is, CF's all I've known, so it was kind of like, well, okay, I'm just getting my medicine from a different nurse at lunchtime or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But
did you feel like you had a support system at school, or they were just like, you got in line with all the other kids that needed to take medication?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I think it was a pretty small group that, kids that had to take meds, so it was usually just me. But I never felt like ostracized or outcast or anything like that. There was a point actually in junior high where they weren't even sure, like they still weren't sure if I had CF, so they took me off all my enzymes for...
The clinic did?
Yeah, the clinic did. Just because like they...
you're not showing
any you don't have any symptoms. Like
your
lungs are great, you know. So they took me off of those for, gosh, I want to say like 5-6 months or something like that, and it was so painful. Like just constant like upset stomach and like all these things, and it was just like I had to cope with just like gripping pencils and stuff like that, because it was just you can't do anything.
Right.
And so that was probably the hardest part of going through school, was that it was just something that didn't need to happen. Right.
Did you speak up eventually, or what?
It was kind of just like a come back to clinic next time and see what happens, give us an update, and it was kind of like, well, I was in a lot of pain.
Can I go back on?
And and then that's when they did the sweat test after that.
Okay, yeah, I feel like I should know more of the history of CF, but I don't know when sweat tests became like a normal thing.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
I think it's probably been around longer than I've been alive. But,
okay, interesting. So it just wasn't something that they utilized, which is kind of curious. I mean, no offense to Idaho, but I was shocked that we even had like a CF like specialist clinic. I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to go to like Utah or something.
Yeah,
I was like, oh no, there's actually one right here, and it's pretty great. Yeah. So school, yeah, other kids, it didn't really feel like a thing.
I mean, like most of my friends knew that I had it, but it wasn't ever like, look at this weirdo or anything like that. So. Yeah.
When somebody asked you, or if somebody asked you, why are you taking that? How did you explain CF to somebody else?
I would just kind of say like, I just need it so my body can digest food, essentially, is how I would kind of explain it to people.
Yeah. So would you not even tell them I have cystic fibrosis, or?
It wasn't like my first answer, but you know, if people inquired, this is why.
Yeah. And they were probably like, what?
Yeah. That's weird.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah, when they first called us, I didn't know what it was. But I think my first question was, is she going to die? I mean, it just was like crazy.
Yeah.
They were like, don't Google it. And I'm like, well, that scares me. So it was just, and have I Googled CF? I don't think I have. And I don't know how you are, but for a long time I was on a need to know basis. I remember they sent us home with a book and like a DVD to watch on like the first year of CF with CF. And I know, and we were supposed to watch it, or I don't know if we were supposed to, but it was our goal and intention to watch it before her next visit. And we waited until like the night before, because I knew that I was going to learn stuff that I didn't want to know.
Yeah, you don't want to think about it all the time.
Like, and I'm kind of a hypochondriac in a way that like, if I learn about a new disease, I'm going to be like aware of it now, and it becomes a possibility. And so I remember even then, because when she was first, she didn't get officially diagnosed until she was like 2 months, maybe, but we obviously started Creon right away. And so that's all she did at first. And then, so reading this book, I learned about the CPT cupping, and I learned about pulmozyme, and I'm reading about how to sterilize the equipment, and it's all just like so overwhelming, you know. And now it's just like I could do it all in my sleep.
Yeah.
But at the time, I wish I don't know. It's weird to say maybe, but I kind of wish that you had the same support of the current clinic that we got, because they truly were like lifesavers to me. Because even though our general ped is great, they obviously were not knowledgeable. And then I remember going to get the sweat test, and the lady, I hope she's not doing these still, because she had no bedside manner, and it's a really hard thing for parents to go through, and your baby doesn't want to do the sweat test, so they're crying the whole time, and she just had no like empathy or anything. And then I was expecting to get that same care at the CF clinic, and it was just night and day. They just were the most amazing from day one, and I think I cried at every doctor's appointment for 6 months, and Dr. Tippett is like our main guy, and we love him, and he just became like my therapist essentially. So I'm sorry you didn't have that. I wish you did.
I'm here now.
You're here now, and I'm sure I've learned so much, and if you ever need, just come hang out.
Absolutely.
Okay, what do you wish people knew about CF, or do you?
Man, I mean, I guess that it's just, it's like one of those invisible diseases that, people have. It's like I guess the only real example that I could give to, and it's not even like I wish people knew, but, again, when I was a kid, like my stepdad was kind of an ass, and he would be like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? You have CF, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And it's like, well, that's not how my brain works. He's like, well, why aren't you like running laps around the house or something like that? Get in shape, take care of yourself. And it's just like, dude, I'm like 13. Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything because.
Right. Well, at that point, it still felt like, what's the point?
I'm supposed to be dead right now.
Yeah, right. You thought you were going to die at 13, and now you're 13 and you're not dead. Now what? Like, that's a lot. All in it of itself.
Yeah, just like no empathy. I think. I guess, I would want people to know that, like, you need to have empathy with people, just because I look healthy doesn't mean that, my brain's not constantly, like, thinking negative things or whatever. And like I said, you need people to believe in you.
Yeah.
That's all you really need.
Yeah.
If somebody's out there rooting for you, then you can root for yourself.
Yeah, well, and yeah, it is an invisible disease, which also comes with a lot of invisible symptoms, I'm sure. Or I'll ask you, do you feel like you have some PTSD from it, trauma, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Do you feel like that kind of affects how you, like, does that add to your anxiety, or does it create anxiety?
It doesn't. Like, I think if anything, it makes me, I guess, thankful. You know, like, if anybody in my life is gonna have this stuff, I'll take it. You know? Yeah, I think, I think I've just kind of learned to appreciate it for what it is, you know, like.
I was gonna say, are you better able to find gratitude in life because of all these things that you've...
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's, you know, like, I mean, everybody says it, but you don't realize what you have until you think you're gonna lose it or whatever. And
yeah,
not that I thought I was gonna die or anything. Like, I kind of, I mean, obviously I did when I was younger, but I kind of worked through that.
right.
And
But there's kind of always like a fear.
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
You don't know what tomorrow will bring.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when, you know, when I make a cool piece of art or somebody buys something that I've made, like, well, it's cool. Like, you think my ideas are cool enough for you to, like, you know, so stuff like that I've learned to appreciate, or even just, like, I don't know, finding something cool at the thrift store. That's awesome.
It's so true. And it's, like, actually so annoying because as a kid, I think I rejected the idea that you had to, like, suffer in order to know, like, joy. But I've had two fairly traumatic experiences. One being, you know, that day that we found out about Dolly's CF. And I'm, like, so stubborn that I suffered terribly in that first year because I just was so resistant to it, and, like, I just didn't want to accept it. And I totally lost that fight. I was never going to win that fight, but in that defeat there's so much relief also, and then you're able to, like, you know, sounds lame, but, like, see the sun again. You know, and, like, it just, I've become so much better at just enjoying even the mundane, you know, like just picking up my kids and we're eating snack after school, and it's like we're all tired or whatever, but it's like we're healthy, we're together. There's so much beauty to enjoy.
Yeah. Being bored at home is way better than being bored at the hospital.
Yeah. Or being bored dead.
I mean, that's kind of how I was too. So my CF, I've gotten diabetes from it, and I kind of just ignored it. I didn't want to deal with it. Like, I fought it forever. I fought it and fought it and fought it, and it was just like, I'm too young to have diabetics.
But that's really common with CF, right?
I think it's like I want to say it's like 1 in 4 or something.
Okay, that's
people,
pretty.
Yeah,
that's
people
a pretty
develop
good chance.
it.
Yeah.
So they diagnosed me when I was 22, 23, I think. Like right after I could start going to the bar. It's like, you know, like, cool, that's ruined for me now. But I didn't care. You know, whatever, I'll be fine. And I fought it and fought it and fought it, and, you know, I don't know how much you know about diabetes or whatever, but
it's one of those things that I don't want to learn about until I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I put very minimal effort into take care of myself when I shouldn't have. But I just, you know, I didn't care. You know, so, like, I already have cystic fibrosis. I don't want more stuff.
Right.
And so I got to the point where, like, I finally meet up with this doctor, Dr. Holyoke, and he's probably one of the coolest doctors I've ever had. Like, he gets me, like, we can relate on, like, a personal level.
Is this a CF doctor?
He is an endocrinologist, but he is, like, basically everyone from the clinic that has CF and diabetes sees him.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and so he's kind of like the expert on it at that point. But, you know, he's always been the guy who was just like, well, you're doing great. You know, CF diabetes is, like, the hardest one to control because you have to worry about your CF and then, you know, all this other stuff. And, like, if you got a special diabetic diet, then you lose all your weight, and they want you to be, like, kind of thick. And so, you know, it's just another plate to balance.
Do you feel like CF has changed you in any way for better or worse? We've kind of talked about it with, like, gratitude. And...
No, I think it's, you know, it's kind of just always what I've known. You know,
right.
You know, I think that, like, I've always kind of just been kind of a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and, like, these are just inconveniences at the end of the day, and
Just grateful to be here.
Yeah, just happy to be here.
A lot of people don't have that, and it's kind of annoying, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, you got a good life, you know.
Well, and I think, you know, that's kind of, going back to when I was a kid, I think that is kind of where my stepdad was trying to come from.
Yes.
But
yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but it wasn't the right approach.
Yeah,
right?
It wasn't the right approach, and it's like, you haven't lived this life, so you don't know. But I think that's probably where he was trying to come from.
You guys have different love languages.
Yeah.
Probably. You probably needed words of affirmation, and he was trying to, I don't know.
He's like, yeah, go get in shape.
Yeah. Go work out. But it probably, again, don't know him, but it probably did come from a place of love or like fear, maybe.
Yeah.
And just didn't know. Which, it's hard. It's hard for everybody involved, obviously, but yeah. Just asking someone, what do you need? Can go a long way, though, too.
There was a point where they had asked me at the clinic if I wanted to kind of be like, I don't know, like a mentor of sorts, I guess.
Yeah.
And I declined it because I don't feel like, I feel like my case is so mild that I can't really relate to some people. You know, like, I understand that, you know, I could, but like for your daughter, for example, like I've never worn a vest, so I don't feel like I can connect on that level, and I don't want to just be like, well, you know what, I don't have to wear it, so, you know, and like, I don't want to seem like I'm kind of rubbing it in, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah. I can totally see where you're coming from, but I would, and I'm guessing they asked you for a reason, and I agree with that. I think you could be a great mentor, just the way you are, and just having someone that also has CF probably goes a long way, because these kids, you know, they can, like we talked about, it can be so isolating. So just knowing that somebody also has the same diagnosis probably goes a long way, and maybe they, you know, not to make you feel bad or anything, but like you could potentially be taking away that opportunity from a kid too, or an adult, or I don't know what the mentorship was supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, but also now that you say that, that was also, I think, before I kind of took ownership of it.
Yeah.
So maybe if it were presented to me now, I would be a bit more open to it.
I think I would put my endorsement. I think that you would be a good mentor. Yeah, you can mentor Dolly from afar. But I also want to talk about your stained glass art, because I think that's so cool, and I still want to get your boxing frog as a tattoo. Also as a stained art, or stained glass art would be cool. But how did you get started in that? Have you always been a creative, or because stained glass, I feel like is still, I think that's also been modernized, but it's still not a super common art form.
It's definitely the young people taking from the old people when it comes to stained glass. So I've always kind of been artistic, but I never really found something that stuck. You know, like I've always wanted to be like an artist or whatever, but I was always so self-critical, like, well, that drawing doesn't look good, or that perfect, you know, that circle's not perfect, or whatever. And
that's a dream killer for sure.
Yeah, it was just, you know, I'm so self-critical about it, but at the same time, I was like, I don't really know what I'm even doing, so it's hard to, when you're already disappointed, it's hard to see that clarity. And then in 2022, I think, I started dating this person, and they did stained glass. One of the times we were hanging out, they had an art show, and they were kind of doing like a mini demo on how to do things with stained glass, and I was like, well, this is really cool, you know, like I want to learn how to do this. Yeah. And so they showed me like the last last 20% on how to do stuff, and I was like, that's cool, you know. It's like, I really want to do that. Like, I had so much fun. I just don't know what to do. Yeah. What do I need to do so that I can have this thing happen in my life? And so I just started researching, looking on YouTube. Yeah. And so that's why I started. You know, I went back through my photos, and I saw the piece that her and I had made together. I was like, I'm gonna make a new version of that. So I made it. Horrible. Didn't look anything like it, but you know, I was like, hey, at least I did it.
You tried.
I tried something. And next thing I did, I made like a little lava lamp, and I was like, oh, it looks like a lava lamp. And one of my coworkers was like, I want to buy that. And he's like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, whatever, $10, you know, it's not like, I don't know anything about it.
You're not valuing your art either.
Yeah. And it was just like, well, this looks pretty horrible, but I still made it. Yeah. You know?
You did a thing.
Yeah, I did a thing. And I got to the point where I had enough that I was putting stuff at the Mullet Proof Salon for sale. And one of the hairdressers there was like, "Will you commission me a cat?" And I was like, well, I mean, I'll try.
Mm-hmm.
So I made her a cat, and like she loved it. And I was like, okay, so I kind of know what I'm kind of getting to the point where I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just exploded from there.
Well, that's very cool. I think kudos to you for trying a new thing. I feel like maybe you have some perfectionist tendencies. Perhaps. Yeah, absolutely. So I can relate to that immensely. So I know the feat that is just like doing the thing and knowing that it's not going to be great at first is so hard. Like you don't want to do anything unless you know it's going to be perfect.
Right.
But then you do nothing, and then 10 years later you're like, if I just started then, So I think that's really cool. You should give yourself credit for that, and your stuff is super cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, definitely go check out Shy Glass Art. That's what it is, right?
Shy Glassworks.
Shy Glassworks. Yes. Okay. Anyway, on that note, thank you so much.
Yeah,
like I feel like I learned so much. I don't know if I hope it was cool for you too.
Yeah, no, I feel very welcomed.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks so much. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Later.